What is Corecore and Nichetok, and why are they dying? Well, today's video is going to explain what they are, talk about some of the, as it's risen to popularity, the responses around the directions of this editing trend, and then I'm going to tell you why I don't actually think it's dying. I think it's taking on different forms, and that hashtag Corecore and hashtag Nichetok is actually much wider than, what people are making it out to be. So let's start off. What is it? I'm going to show you two examples of how much this type of content can range. First easy example, which is sort of the conspiratorial, sad, political, kind of like undertones of environmentalism edit.
A lot of people like, you don't invest in markets.
Now let's look at the more silly, hyper, fast-paced edit.
Young money clan, young money clan,
Young money clan, young money clan, young money clan, young money clan, young money clan, young money clan, young. I just hit the grave for Ukraine. Things will be right out. Yeah, I'm gonna say. I was full.
Both of these qualify as Corecore or Nichetok. If I were to summate it in the easiest way, I would say it is an editing style. It is a type of found media assembly interspersed with memes or movie clips or just mimetic moments, generally with an undertone of either, some opium type, very high-paced, like anime voice edit in type, it's like a meme music edit, or it is Aphex Twin and just the most depressing shit you're ever gonna hear. Environmental degradation and industrialization and, all the way over to UGC from ad companies, like the most horrifying social media stuff. There's a whole range of ways it can end up getting combined, but the through line is really, it is a specific type of editing style, and I view it holistically as a reaction to the feed. I believe the TikTok feed and the Instagram feed and just generally social media to perceptive Gen Z people is a schizophrenizing experience. There are countless little worlds and ideas vying for pieces of your identity, and the feed can basically dictate your entire thought process for a given week or month or lifetime for many people. This editing movement is a way of almost taking agency over said feed and customizing and creating like a sort of awareness of the ways in which one can be radicalized. Now, I frame it this way because the popular kind of way to look at this as of now is that it's becoming too popular, it's going to die, and the wrong people are doing it. The wrong people have gotten a hold of Nichetok, the wrong people have gotten a hold of Corecore. They're using it to put in, white man screaming, Sigma male edit shit, or, subliminal alt-right messaging. First off, I believe, this is a narrow-minded interpretation of even what the movement was to begin with. I think High Enquiries and Mason Noel could be connoted generally as it's like a capitalist realism, Mark Fisher type perspective, or like hyper-normalization. Additionally, I would say the through line in a lot of that media's undertone is conspiracy as opposed to explicitly leftist-leaning politics, which I think a lot of these cultural commentators might disagree with me on. But at the same time, you also see these really fast-paced editing styles, which are almost satirizing the way fan edits operate. It's like fan edits about the concept of editing and making niches in itself. It's a very alive genre that can kind of like mobilize itself around the commentary on it. It simulates the sort of schizophrenizing feel of a For You page and attempts to like string a narrative and either feeling of like dread or joy or overstimulus throughout the combination of visuals. So when someone says, oh, this person's doing it wrong, they're editing the wrong things, they are reflecting the media and the things that they are seeing. When someone makes a sad Sigma rage edit, to me, it's a reaction to the same set of stimuli. Now, Mason Noel's might be more wide-spanning and petty or mindful in its implications. It doesn't change the fact that the 15-year-old Sigma editor who's just kind of lamenting and creatively expressing like the massive alienation you feel when you're addicted to social media, I don't see either as a wrong or right way to mobilize this aesthetic. They're both the same thing. It's the same kind of like assembly of media aiming to just get at this feeling of social media, what it feels like to be Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and just be raised, inundated with media. Ultimately, that, I think the anti-capitalist commentary is fine because it is an experience of social media to know the backbone of why you're getting fed all of this is ultimately to be sold ads. And I can see the fact that there is anti-capitalist undertones, but I would also counter that with the prevalence of conspiracy as one of the major themes. I've talked about this a ton on the channel, but the fact that the Jeffrey Epstein narrative is so obviously, to anyone you ask, a farce. That is one of the most commonly cited pieces of media inside of these edits, and it's like a pill that Gen Z can't reckon with. How do you publicly sort of know that this narrative is false and have to live knowing that all of the other political things happening for some reason are supposed to be believed and taken with the same seriousness when every side of political leader is implicated inside of these massive conspiratorial happenings? And disclosures about the intelligence community is another theme, and I would really say conspiracy as the through line is a far more prevalent and real narrative than solely anti-capitalism, but both kind of go hand in hand with the political implications of the genre. The other point I'll toss out there is the death of Corecore and Nichetok through its popularization. I've had this thought about a ton of things, and I'll actually tell you a story about my own background and career that will contextualize why I think this is wrong. About 3 years ago, I was hired to research digital tribes on social media. Specifically, the IG baddie, the Visco girl, the e-boy, and the hypebeast. During this time, I was deep diving and creating these massive maps of figures and the things they do, what they got famous for, and I called the head researcher telling them specifically about the e-boy, this isn't popular anymore. People are starting to hate this, and I think that in 3-4 months, when this research comes to kind of like be consolidated, that it's not going to be of use to anybody. And the response I ultimately ended up getting really shaped how I think about these kinds of things, which was, right now on the adoption curve, while this trend is happening right at this moment and it feels like it's already not cool, you're at the beginning of the adoption curve. This is going to be mobilized and taken and used by Hot Topic and a bunch of really mainstream fashion brands for the next 2 to 5 years and sold as fashion. You're looking at it here and you think just because it's transitioning from one stage of the adoption curve to another, that it's suddenly not cool. It's not cool to the people at this end of the adoption curve. However, it is going to continuously be used by these larger machines to market itself, which I think if Corecore has the legs, I think it will be what happens ultimately, is that we're witnessing the beginnings of an aesthetic I would say is rooted in conspiracy core and a sort of like anti-algorithm sentiment take root, manifest in hashtags, manifest in particular editing styles and ways of assembling media. This is going to continue to go through the mainstream, and it won't be as cool and subversive as it was initially. In fact, it'll be bastardized by people who don't really initially get it. They just know it's going to help them connect with Gen Z, and that is the end result. I hate that that's the reality, but it really is. And as a sort of like pseudo proof, I'm gonna give you an alternate take on the Balenciaga scandal, which many know as the proof that the elites are controlling all of these things, which is probably true on some level. But here's an alternate take. Let's say mobilizing conspiracy as an aesthetic is something that is happening already and has been happening for the past 3 years to people in the know. What if someone on that set was trying to make a photo shoot really edgy and subversive and kind of like play with these themes, knowing at least on one level it's going to get a lot of attention or look cool to their friends, not intentionally seeing that if it were blown out of proportion, that Balenciaga would have to do all of this PR work to, pull it back. To me, all of that Balenciaga drama was maybe a botched attempt at trying to play inside of these aesthetics of wider ARGs and really like a sort of living and reckoning with a post-Epstein era. Anyways, I am actually writing a piece on these ideas. I might refine them a bit more in the time before that comes out, but I'll toss the link in the comment section when it's done. And with that, I'd actually be curious to hear all of y'all's thoughts on this type of stuff. What is your summation of Nichetok and Corecore? It is what it is. Happy New Year, and it's gonna be a great one, y'all.